Hi, folks. Welcome to Writings, Chats, and Friends. I'm Ken Ween, and with me today, of course, my wonderful co-host, Monica Brinkman, and our guest today, Richard Seltzer, and we'll be talking with Richard about his new book, Breeze. But before that, of course, as I often do, I'm going to try and start us off with a poem. And, I try and pick a poem that connects to the book. And of course, I've read the book. So, I wanted to pick a poem that this book, Breeze, reminded me of. And I picked one that's possibly one of the most well-known poems in all of English literature. It's by John Keats, and it's Ode on a Grecian Urn. Thou still unravished bride of quietness, thou foster child of silence and slow time, sylvan historian, who canst thus express a flowery tale more sweetly than our rhyme. What leaf-fringed legend haunts about thy shape, of deities or mortals, or of both? In Tempe or the dales of Arcady, what men or gods are these? What maidens loath? What mad pursuit? What struggle to escape? What pipers and timbrels? What wild ecstasy? Heard melodies are sweet, but those unheard are sweeter. Therefore, ye soft pipes, play on, not to the sensual ear, but more endeared, pipe to the spirit ditties of no tone. Fair youth, beneath the trees, thou canst not leave thy song, nor e'er can those trees be bare. Bold lover, never, never canst thou kiss, though winning near the goal, yet do not grieve. She cannot fade, though thou hast not thy bliss. Forever wilt thou love, and she be fair. Ah, happy, happy boughs that cannot shed your leaves, nor ever bid the spring adieu, and happy melodist unwearied, forever piping songs forever new. More happy love, more happy, happy love, forever warm and still to be enjoyed, forever panting and forever young. All breathing human passion far above, that leaves a heart high sorrowful and cloyed, a burning forehead and a parching tongue. Who are these coming to the sacrifice? To what green altar, O mysterious priest, leadst thou that heifer lowing at the skies, and all her silken flanks with garlands dressed? What little town by river or seashore, a mountain built with peaceful citadel, is emptied of this folk, this pious morn? And little town, thy streets forevermore will silent be, and not a soul to tell why thou art desolate can e'er return. O Attic shape, fair attitude, with breed of marble men and maidens overwrought, with forest branches and the trodden weed, thou silent form dost tease us out of thought, as doth eternity cold pastoral. When old age shall this generation waste, thou shalt remain in midst of other woe, then ours a friend to man, to whom thou sayest, beauty is truth, truth beauty. That is all ye know on earth, and all ye need to know.
It's one of my favorites.
And, I have to say, I'm going to say it's pretty high praise for me to connect the book to the poem, to that poem. So, and your book, Breeze, takes place, a lot of it, in ancient Greece.
Yeah, it's actually I would put it a little differently. The central thing going on is soul transference, kind of a crazy kind of notion. The part that you're referring to, it's like three interconnected novellas, and the middle one takes place in the Trojan War.
Right.
And in that one, a young woman from the present day wakes up and finds herself in the body of Briseis, the love slave of Achilles in the Trojan War. She has no idea how she got there, and she has to really quickly adjust so she won't be identified as a witch and just burned at the stake or whatever.
Yet she knows what's happening. She knows what's coming.
She knows what's coming, and that's another one of the peculiarities, because she's not in historical times. She's in the book itself, the Iliad. She's in the story as it was written, and so she knows what's coming, but she doesn't know what happens between the scenes, the things that aren't said in the story, and that's the sort of wiggle room she has to try to work things out, and leads to some very interesting consequences. The first part of the book deals with the present day, and in that she's in a coma. And her boyfriend is coming and trying to figure, coming to the took her to the hospital and was trying to figure out what the heck is going on. And nobody can figure out.
He's a student of the classics, and they met
Right.
originally in Greece. So
Yes.
it's this continent.
That ties together. That ties together. And then there's a third part that's even more unusual. Well, and I could tell you more about the first part later, but in the third part, the same person, the same soul, wakes up in another body at 350 AD, the Eleusinian mysteries in Greece, and that time around it gets very strange, in that she's able to figure out eventually how to deliberately move her soul to another body, how to swap souls with someone. And
So it's really a meditation on reincarnation.
well, it's not reincarnation at all. Because reincarnation, a soul moves when someone dies, okay, goes to a new body when this person dies. In this case, nobody dies.
Is she becoming the characters in different books and such, or writings?
No, she only appears in this book, but the book, as I say, is like 3 intertwined novellas, each of which they could be read separately, but we've got the same character. In the one case, she's a college-age young woman in modern-day Connecticut, and she's in a coma. Okay, in the middle one, she's in Troy, and in the other one, she's in Roman times in Greece.
What you might be thinking in terms of is, it's kind of it's an interesting take on this.
Oh, I love it. I want to read it.
This young woman is experiencing these things. It isn't quite clear at any one moment what she's aware of from the other experiences, though. For example, does she remember are all of these in some sense simultaneous, or do they take place in the sequence of first, obviously, in time, human time, because they're presented in this
sequence? Yeah.
Time.
Right. Yeah. Okay. The first and second parts can be thought of as happening simultaneously. Okay, though they're told as separate stories. In the first one, this college guy, he had met this fascinating woman when he was on vacation in Greece the summer before. They had a strange encounter. She, at one point, stole his wallet, took his ID, gave his wallet back to him. He didn't know what the hell was going on. She appears at the door of his college room and gives him back his ID. But she was able to find him through that. Okay, and he was there with his girlfriend, and this like goddess appears at his door and totally flummoxes him, and he just forgets about the girlfriend that's there. She leaves in a huff, and this woman, all he knows is her first name, Breeze. She'll never tell him her last name. She gives him a baloney story about where she comes from, that she's went to Vassar and all this, but it turns out it's just total nonsense. She's great at improvising and lying. She loves to spin lies, and everybody knows that they're lies, but they're wonderful little stories. And she plays games with everyone. And we learn this secondhand. The thing starts with she's on the way to the hospital because she's in the coma, but he, following her there, he called his old girlfriend. He didn't know who else to call to come to have somebody to talk to. He had gone with this girl since they were in elementary school. The one that he dumped suddenly when this new woman arrived. Was she, despite her anger, comes and sits there and listens as he spins the story of who is this strange woman.
Which brings us back to something else. You know, a lot of the sense of this book, the feel of the book, one gets, and you know, is of the classic myths. And what I have to tell you, my association was to one of the gods. And I went with Zephyr, the god of the western wind, of course, Zephyr and breeze being synonymous. Yeah. And that was the association I got to reading the first story. And so I was set up in my mind to see this as very much a playfulness with Greek mythology and with the whole idea of how do you see the world. So when you talk about soul, transcendent soul, and I am seeing it as God playing with the world and being aware of. And so that set me up for reading the second one, which of course is this wonderful take on the Trojan War. And one of my favorite books of all time, the Iliad, which I read back in high school and really adored. So I think this is something, if you are somebody like I who really enjoyed the myths, the Greek and Roman myths, you know, you're really going to find yourself associating and becoming an active reader. Now, you know, that's something a lot of people, you know, don't enjoy doing. I happen to love being an active reader. By an active reader, I mean, I love going off in my own head, connecting to the stopping the action for a bit, maybe just sitting in my chair for a half hour, just mulling over, okay, now where's this going? And who is this character? And how is this character going to take me? And then going back and looking at the author's take. And it isn't necessarily the same as my take, but it has taken me into places that I enjoy going. Just like the Keats poem I read at the beginning, where, you know, he's looking at this urn and he's exploring what's on that urn. He's describing it, but making it about its meaning to him.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I get you. I wrote this over the course of 20 years, okay? And the first part that I wrote was that middle part, which is a Troy, okay? I've had a thing about Troy forever, okay? Since I was a kid. But, and then I wrote the second part, which was like, it's sort of a bridge. It's to, you know, not everybody is into the Greek stuff, okay? And it made sense to start it in the present day and to sort of lead you forward into it. Now, when you get to the Greek stuff, I had a lot of fun in the different twists to it. If you're familiar at all with the Iliad or whatever, I do unusual things with the familiar characters there. For instance, Agamemnon, he's the commander of the Greeks. He had killed his own daughter as a sacrifice so they could get there. The Iliad is all about his battle with Achilles, their fight for supremacy and against each other. Well, in my take on it, Agamemnon is impotent, and the girl that he killed wasn't his daughter. And he is very insecure, which is why he gets into his battles with Achilles. Okay, so yeah, it's a different take. I have fun with other little pieces of twists. In my take of it, things can happen in the little cracks in the story, the things that aren't explained.
Yeah.
And one of the things that happens is the main story goes that Achilles is killed gloriously in battle, okay, and that this had been foretold and everything. Well, he dies at the moment that the fates said, but doesn't go the way that they said it would. Rather, he's killed by 5 women, each of whom has a good reason for wanting to kill him, including the woman who loves him also has a revenge motive that she can't help in this new person that she is there, that he had killed her father and all of her brothers. Okay, so they all kill him, and there's this well, ambivalence is the least way to put it. With a breeze. Oh, and by the way, this is out of order, but I'll go out of order. This is a conversation. Breeze, the name, came from Briseis. The idea was she was given the name Briseis at birth, and first her parents wanted to nickname her Briss, and then someone pointed out to her that means circumcision in the Hebrew tradition, so that wasn't a good one. So they went and said Breeze, okay, which was an unusual and a fun kind of a name. But there are echoes in the present from the past. The first part, thinking of echoes or whatever, there's the grandmother in that explains the difference between slow magic and fast magic. Slow magic is what happens all the time. We get older. As we get older, we find ourselves in different bodies all the time. You're in a very different body than you were at 6 months, but yet we consider it's the same person, okay? And because it happens slowly, we take it for granted. Unless you get in one of these situations where suddenly you go to a 50th reunion in your high school class and everybody's bald, where did all these old people come from?
I know, I always say that.
Yeah, you look in the mirror and you realize how much older you are than you had thought you were. Because often when we look in the mirror, we see who we thought we were. Okay, who we remember ourselves to be. If you're married for a long time, you don't really look at each other most of the time. You see each other as you were rather than as you are. Okay, and so that's slow magic. It happens all the time. Then there can be moments where the same thing happens really speeded up. Reminds me, you may have seen the old TV series Medium. Did you ever watch that show?
Yes, yes.
Okay. The very last episode of that, the show had been canceled and the writers had no idea it was going to be canceled. And the very last show they put on, in the last 5 minutes of the show, this woman who had been about 40 and had kids who were about 10 or early teens, she aged like 20, 30 years in 5 minutes. And all of a sudden, she's an old lady in a rocking chair and you see her die. There's another show where with speeding things up gives a heart-wrenching feeling of strange magic. And that's The Electric Grandmother. If you've never seen it, you should. It's a Ray Bradbury story, and YouTube has a wonderful 45-minute video of it. In that, at the very end, the characters all age like 50 years in just a couple of minutes. And once again, you get this heart-wrenching feeling. And to me, the strange notion of body, of soul being able to move to different bodies is just a speeded up way of what happens all the time as we move forward, and we're in a different body now than we were before. So I play with that a lot. I play with it most of all. By the time I get to the last section, I just plain had fun. In that one, there's one scene where in this new body and not knowing what the hell's going on, she's totally disoriented this time around. and she's in front of a judge who's trying to figure out what the heck is going on, because there are too many people alive right now, and there shouldn't be these people. She'd gone into a dead body there. All of a sudden, this person's resurrected, and she explains, well, maybe I'm having post-traumatic death syndrome. And later in that, as she gains control over this, and she's able to not only move her soul to another body, but to swap souls with someone. She has a very interesting scene on the beach where there's a guy that she's fallen in love with there, and for the heck of it, she swaps bodies with him, and they have sex on the beach as different sexes, and then go back again. There's a old Greek legend about a myth about a guy named Tiresias, who is changed from a man to a woman, and then from a woman back to a man. And at one point, Zeus and Hera had an argument about who has the most pleasure in sex. And they went down and they asked Tiresias, and he said, it's 10-1 for the woman. So anyway, it comes from Greek mythology, this sort of notion. At the end of the thing, they end up making an agreement with one another that as they have children, well, he can bear the first one and she'll bear the second one, and they'll just alternate like that. They'll move their souls back and forth appropriately. So I have fun with that. I have fun with twists in the Trojan War. And I have some very touching scenes or whatever in the first section, as well as some very humorous ones with this strange woman that nobody really can understand where the heck she came from and how she knows the things that she knows, and being both playful and very sexy at the same time. So as I say, it's 3 intertwined novellas. They all have this the soul transference kind of thing, but they are very different too. Yeah.
Also, the thing that strikes me is that it is a very feminist book.
Mm-hmm.
And real hero, I think, let's go back in a sense. The real hero of the book is not a character necessarily appearing in the book, but the idea of the character is in some ways Demeter and Persephone, the mother and daughter, of whom the mysteries in the last story are really a celebration traditionally, religiously. And this is a much more intellectualized, again, because I'm an active reader. What struck me about it was this is a celebration of the continuation and of life, especially in the feminine form, that it is women who connect across time more than men. And that's both in the Greek mythology in a sense, but I found very much in your character.
Okay, well, it was fun going through the difficult exercise of trying to imagine what it's like being in the head of a 20-year-old woman, okay, and doing it credibly. And not only that, but then put that 20-year-old woman 3,000 years in the past and how she reacts to everything that happens there. I had great fun with that, and I think it works in unusual ways.
Yeah.
But that was
I'm looking forward to reading this. Just from this conversation.
Just to remind folks that the book that we're talking about is Breeze by our guest today, Richard Seltzer. It is just a brand new release from All Things That Matter Press, which of course has published some of my books, some of Monica's books, and a few others of Richard's. And I understand, Richard, that there are 2 more coming up after this.
Right. Just last year, they published 3 of my novels, Parallel Lives, Beyond the Fourth Door, and Nevermind. And they bought 3 more after that. Breeze will be out in a few weeks, and then there are 2 more. One's Shakespeare's twin sister. and another one is Together Tales. But yeah, I'm having great fun with that. I'm 75 years old, and now finally I have the time to devote to writing fiction. So
Yes.
over the last 3 years, I've finished 7 novels. Some
cool.
of them had been started and were in drawers for years, and suddenly, the characters came to life and the stories sort of wrote themselves. Yeah, I just finished another one, the Bard of Eastport, a celebration of Shakespeare. There's another Shakespeare one. I haven't had a chance to send that out anywhere yet, but I'm just having fun going from one to the others, and the characters come alive and they're good friends for me. And when a book's over, well, there's a moment of sadness, and then I move on and create a new set of characters and see what they're going to do. But yeah, they take place in very different kinds of environments. I mean, I got Parallel Lives has a lot of alternate history going back to the American Revolution. It takes place in a nursing home in New Hampshire, and the people in the present day have a sort of a mystical connection to alter egos in the past. And eventually they end up finding corridors underneath the nursing home that lead them hundreds of years in the past and across continents.
It's funny because a lot of times, one of the things I've noticed about our authors that we have on, how many of us as we get older start thinking about how lives do connect. And I think one of the things I do want the audience to understand about Breeze is that it is about lives connecting. And it's, a good read. So folks recommend it. And of course, if you look on the description of the show that Monica is going to have put up there, there'll be a link not only to buy Breeze, and of course, when you do that, of course, that'll take you to Amazon, where you can find all the other books that Richard already has published. But we're also going to have a link to his website. And after we sign off, we're going to have a little bit of a reading from the first chapter of Breeze that Richard has done, so that you folks can get a sense of the language.
Get a flavor.
And flavor of the book. Yeah. So, Richard, thank you very much for joining us here on Writing Chats and Friends. And I hope our audience will get to enjoy the nice, soft breeze.
Thank you very much.
I know I'm going to once it comes out. Okay, folks, we promised you a little bit of a preview. So here you go. Thank you so much, Richard.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Bye-bye. Hello, I'm Richard Seltzer. I'd like to share with you an excerpt from my novel Breeze that will soon be published by All Things That Matter Press. Here's the first chapter of that novel. The chapter's entitled The Goddess in Sunglasses. New Haven, Connecticut, Saturday, November 15th, 2008. Breeze was lying naked, limp, unconscious on Yanni's bed. Her pulse was strong. Her breathing was normal, but her open eyes were glazed. Her long, curly black hair was wildly strewn across her breasts. One leg was straight, the other bent, with the knee leaning against the wall. Her body was alive, but it was as if no one was in that body. The 911 operator had told Yanni not to move her. That could worsen her condition, whatever that condition was. The medics should arrive in a couple minutes. They had to. He knew the basics from TV shows. If her heart stopped, thank God it was still beating. They would need to revive her within 3 minutes or her brain would be damaged irreversibly. The medics would ask him about her medical history and her family. Her life might depend on details that he could provide, but he knew nothing about her past, even though she had been living with him for over 2 months. What could he say? The medics might call the police, and the police would want to establish her identity and determine if there had been foul play. She called herself Breeze. He didn't know her last name and didn't know where she came from. As far as he knew, she had no ID and no money. He knew nothing about her medical history. He didn't know if she had relatives or where those relatives might be. She had no friends that he knew of. He had never seen her do drugs, but that didn't mean that she didn't. Maybe she had overdosed. She could be a fugitive, and he might be guilty as an accessory to acts he knew nothing about. She could be seriously sick, not from drugs, but from some incurable disease. It could be contagious. He could come down with it himself. He felt guilty for thinking such thoughts. How could he think about himself at a time like this? Why was it taking so long for the medics to arrive? He checked her pulse again. Still strong. She was still breathing, but she still wasn't there. Yanni wasn't allowed in the emergency room because he wasn't a spouse or relative. He went back to his dorm room. He wanted to dig through her stuff, looking for anything with her full name or the names of relatives, anything that might help in this crisis. Then the phone rang. By the clock, 2 hours had passed. He had no idea what, if anything, he'd done in that time. He rubbed his face, scratched the back of his neck, scrunched his shoulders, stamped his feet, anything to regain a sense of himself as here in this place at this time. The phone rang again. Had it been ringing continuously, or had it stopped and started again? An admin from Yale New Haven Hospital was calling. He cringed. This wasn't a dream. They had moved Breeze from the emergency room to a regular hospital room. He could visit her now. The admin needed to see him today. She had questions about identity and insurance and payment and citizenship. When he arrived at the hospital room, a nurse told him that Breeze was stable but still unconscious. They didn't know what was wrong with her. Monitors kept beeping, a maddening rhythm. Breeze seemed to be sleeping comfortably, as if she could wake up at any moment and life would go on as before. Yanni touched her hand, her cheek, her ear. He brushed back her long black hair so it no longer covered her eyes. He squeezed her hand. No response. He kissed her hand. He kissed her lips. He kissed her behind the ear and licked her there the way she liked him to. He wanted to talk to her but couldn't think of anything to say. He wanted to slap her, hoping to wake her up, but this was a hospital. You don't slap patients in hospitals. He was confused, paralyzed with indecision. The next he knew, with no notion of how much time had passed, someone was talking to him. It was the same voice as on the phone, the admin person. Her tone was patient but weary. She might have repeated herself several times already, trying to get his attention. "What's your name?" she asked again. "Yanni," he finally answered. "Okay, that's what people call you, but what's your full legal name?" "Yanni Johnson, Yannie. Johnny in Greek, like Johnny Johnson, with a foreign flavor. I spell it with an IE at the end instead of an S. That makes it easier for people to know how to pronounce it." "Your parents are Greek?" "No, they're eccentric." He spaced out for a moment, memories racing through his mind. Breeze had told him, "I like that you have a Greek first name. It's as if you have a Greek soul and your parents recognized it the moment you were born." "No way," he had answered Breeze. "I was named after an army buddy of my dad's who was killed in Nam." "War, yes, you're a warrior," she had said. "Greek warrior, ancient Greek warrior." He had always thought of himself as a nerd and had walked with a slouch. She made him feel proud of his look. She took pleasure in dressing him up for public and undressing him in private. They would role play and she would cast him as a character from the Trojan War. He stood tall for her and felt like a different person in her presence. "And what's your occupation?" the hospital admin repeated. Yanni remembered he was in a hospital, the Yale New Haven Hospital. Breeze, who had been living with him in his dorm room for months, was comatose. He shook his head and scratched the back of his neck, trying to get his bearings. "What was that again?" he asked. "Your occupation," she repeated. Her patience was wearing thin. "I'm a senior at Yale, classics major, literature, Latin and Greek. I live on campus in Calhoun College." "Where the girl was picked up?" "Yes." "And what's the girl's name?" "Breeze, Breeze, he spelled it out. "Like the wind." "First name or last name?" "Only name as far as I know. She said her parents named her Briseis after a character in the Trojan War. Did you see the movie Troy with Brad Pitt as Achilles? Briseis was his slave girl lover. Strange name. Yes, it's hard to pronounce, so my parents, so her parents called her Bris, but that sounded too much like Jewish circumcision, so they called her Breeze instead. It's a roundabout way of getting a name, and where are her parents? I don't know. And what's your relationship to her? He hesitated. Undefined. But she lived with you, right? Yes, she lived with me in my dorm room for 2 months. So it would be fair to say that you're friends. Yes, friends. Say we're friends. And you don't know of any other friends of hers who might know more about her? No, just guys at college who knew her through me. No one from before that. I realize that this happened just a few hours ago. You haven't had time to deal with the shock, but the rules must be followed. Her vital signs are strong, but she's unconscious and we don't know why. She needs to be hospitalized, but we don't know her name or if she has insurance or whether she or anyone else in this position to pay for her care. We don't even know whether she's a U.S. citizen, much less a citizen of Connecticut. You seem to be the only person around here who knows anything about her, so we have a problem. You're a student with no financial resources, and since you aren't married to her, no insurance of yours could help pay her bills. Not knowing anything about her and her being in a coma, but in no immediate danger, we'll have to petition that she be made a ward of the court. Then she'll be transferred to a long-term care facility, and this hospital won't be able to perform tests that might determine what's wrong with her and what should be done for her. He buried his head in his hands. His mind was a blank. He felt numb. He had no sense of time. He had no idea what to do. When he looked up again, the admin was gone. Shit, he screamed in frustration, then buried his head in his hands again. He needed to talk to someone. To Lauren. She wouldn't want to talk to him, but he needed to talk to her. They'd been friends since childhood and lovers since freshman year until Breeze appeared at his door a couple months ago. He hadn't spoken to Lauren since then. He had her number in his contacts. He hit it. Her phone rang. She answered. Yanni? Yes, it's me. And to what do I owe this honor? It's that girl. The girl who suddenly appeared at the door of your dorm room? Right. The girl who put you into a trance at first sight? It wasn't exactly first sight. Well, I don't want to go down that rat hole and find out you're an even bigger rat than I imagined. So what about this love of your life? Have you popped the question? Are you crass enough to invite me to the wedding? She's gone. That's what I called to tell her. To tell you, she's gone. She dumped you. Big surprise. Congratulations. Get drunk. Wallow in self-pity. Alone. Don't come crawling back to me. I'm doing fine. No thanks to you. The thanks goes to George from Dartmouth. You found someone? I'm glad. Sincerely am. I'm sorry about the way I treated you, but you misunderstand. You see, Breeze? Is that the bitch's name? Breeze? What kind of name is that? I can explain. There's lots to explain, but none of this matters now. What I'm trying to say is that her body is here, but she's gone. She's dead? Lauren changed her tone abruptly, now concerned and supportive. What happened? Was she hit by a car? No, she's in a coma, and the doctors don't know why and don't know if she'll ever come out of it. I'm at my wit's end. I need to talk to someone. You were my best friend before Breeze came along, and I treated you like shit, and now Breeze is gone, and I can't think of anyone I'd rather talk to than you. Can you still be a friend to me at a time like this? Can you come down here to the Yale New Haven Hospital and sit with me and let me talk it out and get a grip of myself? So you just found her unconscious? You stumbled over her? He hesitated, then mumbled. What? She proceeded. Not exactly, he admitted. God, was it a private Benjamin moment? It was that, wasn't it? She conked out in the middle of screwing. She laughed nervously, loudly. It's not funny. Of course not. I'm sorry. She sounded sympathetic again, despite the pain he had caused her. You must be... I understand. I think I understand. You can count on me. His memory must be playing tricks on him. His mind was switching off and on in panic mode. The next he knew, He was once again sitting in a plastic chair in a hospital room. Breeze was lying comatose in the bed beside him, and Lauren was staring at him from across the room. He blinked and made a conscious effort to focus his eyes on Lauren and make eye contact with her. She was 5'4", about 4 inches shorter than Breeze. Short red hair, white blouse, green plaid skirt to the knees. She had dressed that way in high school. She felt comfortable and safe in that outfit. He guessed that she chose to wear it now on this awkward mission as a statement that she wasn't out to attract him again and that she was comfortable being herself for herself. She had lost a few pounds since he last saw her. She was even more attractive than before. Elbows out, hands at hips, she looked determined and ready to take on the world. Seeing her like this made him aware of how scruffy he must look. Rams jersey and sweatpants, both old and not recently laundered, the first items of clothing he had chanced upon, hair over his ears, a couple inches beyond needing a haircut, unshaven. There hadn't been time for grooming this morning. He slouched, self-effacing, unsure of himself. In contrast to Lauren, he looked tired and vulnerable. He got up and stumbled toward Lauren, arms outstretched to hug her and be hugged. "No," said Lauren, holding out a hand as a stop signal. "Don't touch me. Talk all you want. That's what I'm here for. Sit back down and tell me what happened." "Well, the doctors—" "Not the medical stuff, not now. First tell me about you," she requested gently, in a kind of voice she might use to calm a child who is hurt or angry. "However much I might try to be sympathetic, there's a part of me that's pissed at you, that needs an explanation. I came here for me as well as for you. After you, my best friend, the man I expected to marry, suddenly dumped me, I felt like shit. I feel better now, but I still need closure, so start your story with how you met her. Help me understand how she made you forget me. You said in the phone that when she appeared at your door, that wasn't the first time you met her. So tell me, how did you meet her?" He sat once again, with his elbows resting on his thighs, and rubbed the furrow between his eyebrows with the back of his clenched fists. He breathed deeply, shut his eyes, and began again. "I first saw her last summer in Athens." "Saw her from a distance, or saw her meaning you slept with her?" Lauren leaned forward, her eyes wide open. "It's complicated. We met on a flat concrete roof on a house in Athens, where for €1 a night, student tourists could stretch out with sleeping bags or ponchos, separated by just a foot or two of open space. I had heard about this place at a youth hostel. My money was running out and I wanted to stay in Greece longer. I was doing everything I could to economize. That was my first night on the roof. I checked in at 2 a.m. In the distance, I could see the Acropolis. The Parthenon was lit by floodlights. In the summer heat, the ground seemed to shimmer at the horizon. You could feel the presence of 3,000 years of history. If you enjoyed this story, please let me know in comments and I'll do more of the same. My name again is Richard Seltzer, as in Alka-Seltzer. My email is seltzer@seltzerbooks.com. This is the first chapter of Breeze, a novel that will soon be published by All Things That Matter Press. That same publisher recently released 3 other books of mine, Parallel Lives, Beyond the Fourth Door, and Nevermind. You can find those all at Amazon as paperbacks and as ebooks. They can be read in any order. They're independent stories with overlapping theme and styles. Each presents a different view of reality, a different way of trying to make sense of the mysteries of life.